Rich. We try to be prompt. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Town of Manlius Planning Board, meeting on November 8th. First item on the agenda is for approval of our minutes of the meeting held on October the 25th.
I'll make a motion to approve. Second.
Motion.
There were some very minor corrections which have been delivered, typographical, couple grammar things.
Okay, no content, just
Correct.
technical. Okay, motion made by Richard, second by Michael Roy. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The minutes are approved as modified for typographical and modest errors. Next item on the agenda is Keplinger Freeman Associates. This is their third time visiting us, and this is for site plan and subdivision of a new dental office, 8195 Casanova Road, Manlius, tax map number 114-1-15.10. Hi there.
Hi there. Good evening, Keplinger Freeman Associates, Craig Columbus, location, that was my first office. Since the last meeting, we submitted revised site plans, revised architectural plans, a new document, a subdivision map prepared by Seguin Landscaping, which shows the subdivision with the access easement. We've also submitted a response letter addressing town comments, the access easement agreement, which will amend to add the actual subdivision map with the access easement shown rather than the hand sketch. And then we also submitted the SWIP. Some of the highlights since we last met, we updated the zoning information on the first sheet to show the zoning requirements for both lot 1 and lot 2. We also, that's all in the zoning table. We show the full extent of both parcels on all of the site plans now. So we also responded to the comments made by the town. Well, I won't go through those individually, but if there are any questions on those, we can address them. We also received an email from DOT stating that no changes are required to the right-of-way site access, so we're all set there. I did forward that email to the county engineer.
Did anyone get back to you relative to your ingress and egress easement?
No. I
Okay,
mean specifically with comments?
yes.
No.
All right, the form you're using, or maybe it's not a form, is very simple, but there's no jurat.
Yeah, we talked about that. Ed, remember on the phone
Okay, yeah.
that day with Lisa, and
Right,
you said you were gonna fix it.
okay, I guess I did.
And
Okay.
the problem with that, it's not recordable with the county clerk if you don't have a jurat. It's not sworn in.
We'll add that.
Plus the legal description.
And yeah, we didn't have any meets and bounds. There's a tiny little map attached, but candidly, it's so small. And
Oh, understood. Yeah, we didn't know we were gonna actually have the access easement ready for submission. We actually received it the evening before the morning of our submission. So this is what the doctor's attorney put together for the access easement. So we'll add that map to that document.
Right, so the actual like reduced map that has the label.
Yeah.
Do you want me to resend you some
Yeah, why
notes
don't
on
you
that?
resend
Okay.
Yes.
thank you, Jamie.
You're welcome.
Okay. Were you going to present more?
No, I think we went over the high level modifications.
Okay, I think the town engineer may have a few comments regarding the SWIP if he hasn't spoken to you already about it.
It's 3 or 4 small things that, it looks like, let's put together the percolation rates for the underground system.
Yes.
Were done at surface instead of below grade where the underground system would be. I'm not sure if that's critical or not. But there is some note as to whether they need them or not, but those that should be taken on the underground system. Likewise, there was no note as to depth of groundwater, so that would be critical with that high water depth, or depth to rock.
Okay.
It looks like that system is probably plus or minus 3 or 4 feet below grade.
It is, but it's actually at grade when you peel back the parking lot. Part of it is at grade, part of it is keyed in. It's kind of hard for us. I guess we'd have to get a drilling rig in there because it's paved where this is going now. We're gonna peel that back and crop it out.
So if we could just tell, right, find out if there's groundwater or depth to rock.
Okay.
And there wasn't a lot of detail on the design. So that's probably where some comes from.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we had a section for the, I'll check our plans to see what,
Yeah, there's still talks about different elevations and whatnot, and then there's one section, but it doesn't really have the elevations or anything.
okay, we'll do a cross section through there that delineates what's really going on there.
And then the table of contents of the SWIP, that's a housekeeping thing. It says appendix F, and appendix G, that didn't over. It probably shouldn't be in there. Oh. And I couldn't find it in here. But we would want the owner of the facility to be in charge of operation. The town would not be.
So we'll clarify that.
The only 2 comments I have, Doug, maybe you can answer. Setbacks and parking for both parcel 1, parcel 2, we're good.
Yes. And I think there was an email that was done before.
Isn't what we thought about.
About setbacks in commercial zone.
Okay, all right, I probably didn't see this. Yeah, fine.
I'm going to open this up to the board members if they have questions of the applicant.
On page 4 of SWIP, the soil name that is written there is wrong. It should have been Benson instead of Vincing, which I don't think exists.
Page 4.
They're just about. No, second paragraph.
What
Appendix
is-
F and G are in the report. Even though they're admitted, I don't. They're in mine.
What was said to be omitted is in yours.
It says they're omitted, but there's content in here, so I don't.
Yeah.
I'll go check that.
It's a total coverage or something, calculation.
Indexing that, correct?
Anyone else? That being the case, we're looking to have the 2 modifications, one relative to the ingress egress easement and some minor changes relative to the SWIP. And I think they're all minor enough that we should proceed forward with scheduling a public hearing. So at our next meeting, we will do a seeker determination, after which we will move right into the public hearing. Everybody on board?
Yeah. Do we have other public hearings scheduled that night?
Not yet.
Good.
Not yet.
One other thing that I would take up, I'll bring up is, inside the SWIP, there were many assumptions taken during the construction of this stormwater facility. So I think it's very important that the town have somebody witness test the installation of the stormwater system. We recently had some microbursts in this area, so we have had some issues going there. I think that we need to make sure that we have somebody besides just a good. It shouldn't be going.
Yeah, we have usually the vendor. Has this thing. To have somebody on site.
And the ones that we've done in the town, storm back system, they're actually correct. They're right.
Madam Secretary, November 22,
Thank you.
November
See you then.
22.
Well, you might not see me, I may be on vacation.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
The next item on our agenda is an application by Abundant Solar Power. This is their first appearance before us. They are seeking a special use permit to do a solar array. And this location would be 5701 Bowman Road, East Syracuse. Tax map number 074-1-6.1.
Thank you for the time, and I can tell you I'm very glad to be here. I'm from Canada, and our border just opened today. Thanks for letting us in. Well, we'll see. This project has been in the works for a few years. I'm joined here this evening by Chris Carrick from the Central New York Regional Planning Board, who initiated the project portfolio for a whole group of solar arrays in Central New York. And by Jillian Blake from Bartlett and Judas, our local engineers. So we have thus far signed a lease with the town of Manlius to build this solar array on approximately 22 acres of property. It's obviously going on a closed landfill, so an additional use for a site that has not been used for a while. This will be a community solar array, and that means the power will be fed into the national grid infrastructure and will be sold to local small businesses and residences for about 10% less than they're currently paying for power. So it's a good infusion of green power from a new site. We are here today to apply for our special permit, and I'm going to hand it off to Jillian, who's our local expert.
Hello. So what we submitted are all the pieces and parts required for the application. I think items to take note of is we have included for seeker purposes. I don't know if you got a chance to read the letter, but the DEC made special provisions in the new seeker requirements for solar arrays on landfills less than 25 acres are considered a type 2 action. So
I guess not, I didn't know that, so.
which is very convenient. It was very nice of them to make something easier, right? for everybody's
That
project.
means no secret. Take two.
So
I'll
we
look at that.
provided all the documents.
I'm gonna just back you up just because I didn't know that.
Okay.
And what's the provision?
It's in, let me find the letter, so I can give you the specific, but it's in 621.
Okay, thanks.
And then the cover, so we provided the seeker documentation just so you can see, you know, what the part one would say typically, so you know it's not, you know, there's nothing really that exciting there, but, so it's part 617.5,
Thank you.
and it gives the listing, all other type 2 action, so, installation of solar energy arrays or such installation involves 25 acres or less of physical alteration on the following sites, and one of those sites is closed landfills. So it's very specific places, I think, that includes rooftops.
And this is 23.06 acres.
So we're under the 25 acres of disturbance.
There it is. There you go.
And I thought it was going to be a type 1.
Yay, thanks.
We were happy with the super process if you want to, but it's all laid out there in the letter, so just something to look at.
Is the letter in our notebook?
Yes,
It's in the
that's the first one of this one.
I have,
Append-
I think we all have these books that have the exhibits,
Yes,
but I have no index to tell me what the exhibit is.
okay. Yes, it follows the outline, it's given in the application form. For the special permit, so. I don't know what that is included. But it was in the documentation that was attached to the permit application form from the town. So it follows that list of specifically what exhibits are supposed to be which items, but it is included in the package, so.
Now, are you with Barton Lajudas?
Yes.
Okay. To be candid with you, we've got some issues regarding the lease that was entered into between the applicant and our town.
Okay.
And some of the terms are not appropriate for what we're doing here. For instance, that they will be in sole possession. Town needs access. We need access to this facility.
Correct.
And the underground electric that's referred to in the lease agreement is not possible. There will be no underground because we're going to have a membrane. This is a capped facility.
Yes.
And we can't do that. So there's some terms, and I think Richard might even have a few additional issues with the lease agreement. So I understand there's a couple ways to handle this, but I am thinking the best way is for modification of the lease agreement. Certain terms of it.
Okay. I would have to defer to Abundant on that. To begin with you, we weren't involved in that process. I think,
Nor
you know,
were we.
So
And
I don't have the specifics, but.
And I would be more than happy to sit down with whoever.
Yeah.
To go through the lease page by page to talk about the things that personally I have a problem with that. I think
Well, the whole town would have a problem.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
And just to give you a little bit of background on me, so I work in the solid waste group at Barton and Judith. So, you know, I've really been pulled into this project because specifically it's on a landfill cap. And I have a lot of experience with landfill closures and dealing with landfill caps. So I'm very sensitive to that. And we have done a couple permit applications now with the DEC to get the change in use approved for the solar arrays on cap landfills, both the membranes and soil caps. So part of that application process to the DEC for approval would include us showing, you know, any settlement concerns, any damage to the cap material, instability, or sliding of the cap, things like that. So that would all be covered. Just to give you comfort, I guess the DEC wouldn't allow this to happen on the closed landfill. We still have that approval step to go through with the department in order to show the protective of the cap. We have gotten approval from them to do some of the underground electric above the cap. We can show, you know, on the cap area in between arrays that we could vary that.
Okay.
But above the liner or above the barrier, there's always 2 feet or so of barrier protection soil there for that purpose. And so when we have landfills where we have gas collection and things like that, we do run the gas piping, you know, above the barrier itself in that barrier protection soil.
And I think that we need to be very careful on the indemnity language that's in here. And I'm not sure that is enough adequate enough. That's just me speaking.
Well, I think there has to be something in the lease that's going to state that there's going to be no activity that will penetrate the camp system. That's vital.
I agree there should be language, referencing protection of land.
And it's not in there.
Arnie?
I have an engineering question for you. You say that you're gonna mount the panels on platforms. Those platforms, are they just sitting on the ground?
Yeah, so we've shown there's a couple different ways you do it, precast blocks or tubs. Where you put the legs of the arrays in tubs, but usually just put a little bit of gravel, just a little bit for the footprint of that tub, just to make sure it's level. And then you just set the tub and they pour the concrete in.
Then you put the big hunk of solar panels on top of that.
Yes.
What keeps it from tipping or sliding or moving around as the cap tend to settle? Is the ground that strong above it that it doesn't settle?
Yeah, a landfill of this age typically has done most of its settling.
Okay.
That initial phase of settlement is where you see the most movement. For the first 10, 15 years, and this is obviously waste that's 30 years old. We do run a stability calculation where we show, based on the properties of waste, what the anticipated settlement will be over time and across. So we look at differential settlement, so we know we're not increasing that slope. And then the ballast is designed to stay stable on the given slope.
As you maintain the area over its 30-year lifetime, you've got about 25 gas vents in that thing. How do you get around those so that you don't bump into them with equipment and things like that, disturb them?
We'll maintain a buffer, a 15-foot buffer between the gas vent and the panels.
It doesn't show that on your diagram.
The final design, we did not have surveyed in, so we had a little bit of difference in where the vents are. We had design drawings from when it was originally done, which is what we based everything on initially, of where those vents were. We have area photography that shows vents. We didn't have a ground survey that shows specifically where those vents are, but there will be a buffer left around all those vents between that and the panels, enough to get a piece of equipment around the vent.
Could you provide us with that before we approve it?
Certainly.
That would be very helpful, because if you look at your diagram, there are places where the vent actually bumps into a solar panel.
Right.
And
Well, and for those to show up on the drawing, they're scaled quite large, the vent, the vents themselves, so that is showing about 15-foot circle. So
Did you do the
We have-
DeWitt one? too?
I did not.
No.
We have, Arnie, just to let you know, our town engineer, our planning board engineer has extensive experience in putting these solar panels on dumps so we can rely on him to review that, but those are good questions. We also have wells.
You okay with
It's not just vents, but wells.
Chris is just saying you're going to supervise the siding panels with vis-a-vis the gas vents.
I'm gonna review Joanne's drawings.
We did also get a set of the drawings for the town of DeWitt array that they did just. So we got those from the DEC through the Freedom of Information and took a look through
We
that.
were involved with that site too.
Just if you want to, get an idea of what it looks like, that array is.
How many megawatts?
Let's see,
4.3.
4.35 AC.
4.3. How many panels?
13,000.
15,600
No, we-
Yeah.
148.
You knew that time too. I didn't know.
Okay.
I have, if I can ask, this is a general question. And I don't know the answer to this, and I throw it out there and maybe somebody can educate me. Barton Judas has been hired by the town of Manlius to do work in the town of Manlius. And now you're representing an applicant in front of the town. Is there a conflict of interest in there? Has it been researched? I'm just curious on where that stands.
This is our third site in which we're in this exact same scenario.
In the town of Manlius or elsewhere?
No, elsewhere. So we were in the same position as the city of Auburn, the same position for town of Elbridge. And we've written a letter, which we can provide to you if you'd like. We've written a letter to both of those communities, basically stating our role in the project. You know, to us, we feel like there's agreeing interests here. And then our role here is to provide protection of the landfill system. That's our main goal here, is to put a system in it that does not impact
could talk a little
the
louder.
asset. Oh, sorry. Our role is to make sure that the project is successful and doesn't impact the town's assets. And we've typically provided a letter. We're the town engineer in those places. It basically says if there is a review needed by a third party, that Barton and Judas obviously would not do that. So you would rely on another one of your engineers to do that work.
I just, that's a concern I have. And I heard what you said, that you said we feel. I'm wondering legally what the thought is on whether or not you can represent an applicant and the town at the same time. That's my question. I don't know what.
We
your
aren't
answer-
the town engineer for, we aren't approving this project in this role right now, correct? Right, I mean, Barton and Judas, we don't have any role in approving this site plan for the town.
I agree.
So, I mean, we've done it in other places and we've gone through the town attorney or the city attorney and they've agreed to it. To be in a similar position. Yes, a similar role.
Is there some documentation that you can provide to our planning board attorney that explains the role?
Yes.
And,
We can do
and
that.
I'm just one vote. But I'm
It's
just
a valid, it's a valid
curious.
question.
Yeah.
It's a valid question.
Thank you.
We can provide that letter. We've also provided the one piece that's sort of in addition to what's required in the application is the decommissioning plan, which I think is an important piece of the application that basically shows that this isn't going to get built or partially built or halfway down the road and then the town's going to be, left with that.
Joanne, did you have anything to do with the 2.5% increase each year in the bond? Was that part of your suggestion or is that from somebody else?
That was our suggestion.
Where'd you get that?
That was inflation when the work was done.
Well, before we sign off on anything like that, I'd like to have a different document that allows us the flexibility to move the cost along with the cost of living. Because 2.5% is a nice number about 2 years ago. Right now, it makes me very uncomfortable.
Not with that, Arnie, you raised a good point. This talks about a bond. There is no way we can accept a bond.
So we're talking about cash.
Right.
And they're talking about every 5 years, looking at it again and increasing it if necessary.
Yeah.
That's a good start, but it's the amount that's critical too. You've already come up with a number, which you say NYSERDA gave you.
Yes.
You think that's a good number?
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. So we use NYSERDA's guidance, correct? We use NYSERDA's guidance for sure. That's the standard in the industry. But one thing that you will not see in that decommissioning number is any recycled value. So it's not something that's common in the American market currently because the arrays haven't been in place for long enough for that portion of the industry to really happen. But if you look at the European models, they all have a significant dollar value attributed to recycling value at the end of the array's life. You don't see any of that here. So 25 years from now, there'll actually be monies coming in to the decommissioning that are related to recycling value. So it alleviates the risk of there not being enough money to decommission the array, if that is ultimately your concern.
Where does it state that the money that's coming from the reusing or the decommissioning of the panels comes to the town, not to the
It's exactly.
the
what I was gonna-
developer.
I like the way you think, Arnie.
Well,
Sorry,
It's just what I was
I'm not
thinking.
understanding.
Well, you're gonna decommission it.
Yes.
And you're gonna take it to the use commission, the use panel guy,
No,
and
but
he's
we
gonna give you money.
haven't, we haven't included
I know you have.
anything with respect to recycling because there's not an array
Okay,
in America right now that recognizes the value of that intangible. But
fine.
I'm articulating that there will be a value.
Right, but when I'm asking you to, where is that value coming? Is it coming to the developer?
It
To the
will go to
landowner?
the developer, but it alleviates your risk, because ultimately, if I'm hearing you correctly, you feel that the escalation number isn't actually going to protect
Right.
the end decommissioning process
Yes,
in a robust enough way.
Right.
Right? So what I'm saying is that we believe by following the NYSERDA model, we're using the industry standard in America currently, but we also know that in markets that are further along in this life cycle, that they also have another contributing factor to the robustness of that.
having been around as long as I have and having seen as many contracts as I've lived through, one of the things that you keep avoiding is who gets the money from the recycling.
I'm not avoiding it, the developer gets it.
Fine, and what's the developer do with it?
Well, they pay for the decommissioning that they've committed to, both contractually in the lease and in the decommissioning.
That's the part that I'm missing.
So there's a mention of color in the lease.
Okay.
It speaks to our requirement to decommission and to
Right.
return the site effectively. to
Right.
decommission if
Sure.
needed.
Okay,
And then there's in addition a decommissioning bond that articulates through the narrative what we're responsible to do and how we're going to make a fiduciary commitment to executing on that goal, which is the bond. And we started this with a fund across the portfolio. And the vast majority of towns said, no, we don't want to see a fund, we want a bond. So we've moved to a bond because that seems to be what the marketplace is requiring. So I'm interested that the bond doesn't seem to give you comfort, but it's something.
We have
that-
not had
that I
any
hear.
developer able to secure a bond. And the reason is that the long time period, the extended time period. Are you able to secure a bond?
So we got bonds on Elbridge, we got bonds on Auburn, we got a bond on Skaneateles.
How many years is the bond good for?
So ultimately, for the life of 25 or 30 years, on most of these projects, we've extended to 30 because that's now what the panels are warranted for.
I've never seen one of those, but if you've got it, I'd love to see it.
We are parsing them in 5-year sections so that we can update them with any increases at the 5-year mark.
And see, that's, if I can speak, that's part of the problem that I have personally with the bonds is it's like an insurance policy. So if you don't pay the premium, it goes away.
Right.
So in 5 years, if the company's not there or they don't have the money to pay the bond or whatever it is, it goes away. That's why bonds don't, in my opinion, bonds don't work for us. We want a cash deposit that can be secured for the future dismantling of the facility. So bonds mean nothing to me.
Okay. So I can't tell you that cash deposit works today. We'll have to go back and look at the business model.
Okay,
And, this is all about how you finance a project.
Yep.
You can get a bond based on other holdings or assets that you have in the US. But pulling cash out of the front end of a project could kill it.
you what?
well, I gotta tell you,
So, and I'm not saying it will, I'm just saying it's that tight that we would have to go back and look at it and see if that was.
and I appreciate that, but I've also been involved in construction projects over my experience and lifetime where bonds sometimes disappear. And so we then have no security to dismantle this. So
So I think we've managed through other leases to give other local jurisdictions comfort around, and I think what you're probably looking at is that projects of this ilk tend to change ownership.
No, not even that. Believe me, not even that. I'm just saying, I've been involved in bonding projects, whatever the projects may be. And what happens as time goes on, companies fail, or they can't come up with the premium to pay the bond's gone. And so the security that we thought we would have is history. And we have in the past, when we've done these things, unfortunately, not from the beginning, but as we learned and understood what's going on, we've asked for cash.
Okay.
And I can't speak for the board, but,
Do you have a financial model on which you base that calculation that you could provide us with?
well, you gave it to us.
Well, so you want the whole upfront amount from us?
That's
Plus-
my
plus the
position.
ability to increase it as the expenses go on, because the $130,000, 25 years from now, will probably pay for milk and cookies. We need something that's going to be able to let us know that when it's decommissioned, there will be enough money in case you're not there, that we can pay somebody to come in and decommission it properly.
So just to give you some background on how these work. So if we're not there, let's say worst case scenario, we go bankrupt.
Yeah,
Right?
yeah.
Like we could sell it and the other person would take on our responsibility. So let's say we went bankrupt. The receiver moves in. Their return on investment is based on the array producing, right? They
Yeah.
can't turn it off and keep it as an asset. That they have to keep the array producing. So the array would be producing if it was held by a receiver, or if it was sold, or if we continued on successfully in business. So if the array turns off, it's the worst case scenario for everyone in the food chain.
Mhm.
Right? So the receiver is highly motivated to keep the array producing, to keep money generating, and thus to continue with the responsibilities called out in the lease, which they would also hold.
Except that NYSERDA and New York have front-loaded the lease. So you're 15 years out, your revenue starts to drop significantly.
What do you mean it's front loaded the lease?
I'm looking at projected cash flows for solar arrays, commercial solar arrays. And they're not continuous, they're not steady.
Oh, they do depreciate.
Yeah, they do.
They
So
reduce.
if your next owner comes in, or you go bankrupt and somebody buys it, their revenue isn't what yours was in the beginning.
That's right, but it's highly predictable.
Oh, it's
So
predictable,
we
sure.
run financial models that are based on, let's say PVSIST is one of the industry standards. So their generation output projections is geographically located. So we're not comparing apples to oranges. It's all about the potential irradiance and generation of an array here.
Yep.
Not 200 miles south. Those drive the business models, and then the business models reduce at a prescribed rate. And if the panels fail to deliver within a very tight band on those projected numbers, the panels get swapped out and replaced. They are warranted for 25 years on a monofacial and 30 years on a bifacial panel right now. And by the time we hit 30 years on a bifacial panel, we're producing just over 80% of what we did the day it was turned on. So it's a highly predictive model.
But you're not getting as much money as you were.
No, but you weight
I
the
know.
array over the span of time.
I'm a little nervous because the state of New York and NYSERDA as its agent have a goal in mind. And that goal is to produce renewable solar energy. I'm all in favor of that. But they've also made it very attractive for the developer and a whole hell of a lot less attractive to the town. Remember, we can't assess that. Our assessment is a tiny fraction of the value of that solar array. So that value, we're contributing because we're not getting the money that we would have gotten if you put, say, a nice factory there.
And
Or
you're
a
going
nice
to build a
retail store.
factory on a landfill?
No, I realize in this particular case, it's not very likely. But at the same point, what we're getting is a very large 30-year, 35-year maybe problem that we might have. We're just trying to anticipate for the kids who come along after we're gone. We don't want to leave them with a mess. So Rich and I are very concerned about the quality of the lease and the quality of what guarantees the performance of the solar array.
I appreciate that.
Okay.
So one of the other elements to these projects is a pilot agreement. So when we receive approval for the array, one of our next steps is to go to the IDA and to negotiate a pilot agreement. So on a site that you now receive no revenue for, there will be a negotiated pilot payment for the next 25 years.
Yep.
Which
Well-
I believe is an upside.
I hope 25 years from now, you and I can have a debate over whether or not we got. I know we got, but we are receiving some revenue. That site is paying some real estate taxes. And it's all Arnie and I, and we've had discussions about this. I want to make sure, as Arnie said, that we're not leaving a disaster 25 years from now of this solar project, and we have no money to dispose of it. And I know maybe there's some value to it and so on and so forth, but I am not comfortable with the bond because that bond can go away at any time during the 25 years, 30 years, 35 years, however long it's there. And so I'm just giving you my opinion.
Okay, I appreciate that. So there are a number of layers to the value to the town of this development. So the first is there's a lease value on an annual basis that goes directly to the town. The second, I would say, would be the pilot agreement, that's incremental tax dollars to a number of taxing jurisdictions that don't necessarily see revenue from the site as it stands today. And the third component is actually the cost savings to the local residents. So in the first year, 10% cost savings would see about $70,000 in cost savings to the local subscribers who would subscribe to the power from the array. And over 25 years, that would represent about $3.5 million in cost savings.
Okay.
So there are, it's kind of like a value stack, right? There are a number of things that you wouldn't see from a typical factory. But then there are things that you would gain from a factory like employment that you wouldn't necessarily gain after the construction cycle in solar array because they're very fast.
I agree. And I'm not saying that I don't want to see this, because I think it's a good place for it. Some of the people that live around it may have other ideas. We'll find out as this moves forward. But I will put out there again, I will be very happy to sit down with someone, whoever, that wants to go through the lease, and we can talk about it and just kind of fill in the voids that I see.
I'd be happy to do that.
Okay.
We're definitely, we have flexibility. And I'll tell you when we reach the edge of that football field.
You'll have to forgive our ignorance because obviously we had nothing to do with the lease. So we didn't sign it, we didn't negotiate it. And I certainly wasn't aware of any value, financial value to the lease. Is there some financial value per year that
There's
the
a
town
rent.
gets?
There's a rent payment.
Yeah.
There's a renting.
It's
It's my
$4,000 per megawatt. So it's $16,000 a year, so $512,000 over 25 years.
And that's just for the lease.
That's just for the lease, and then there's the incremental value of the pilot. The last 3 pilots we've negotiated have been $3,500 per megawatt for 25 years. So
Is that the
$3,500.
IDA's number, or is that something you've negotiated directly with the town?
That's something we negotiate with the IDA, and the IDA speaks on behalf of all the taxing jurisdictions.
In the lease, sorry, just to let you know, there is a rent schedule.
Okay.
But one of the things that we'll talk about is that it goes through 25 years.
Yeah.
But you have a 5-year option.
Yeah.
And there's no discussion on what the rent is for the next 5 years. So those are the kind of things that, You need to fill in the holes.
Where do you get your solar panels from? Well, we're tracking them all over the world right now, as
That's not what we
everybody
asked.
else, because it's not available in China. So all the factories just. So I think we're building, right now. Richmond, I think those are coming from Mexico and Cambodia. So that, we make that decision much closer to the production cycle. And it really is where we can get the gold standard of panels that we're looking at. You know, there are probably arrays being built locally that are still using 360 watt panels. We're looking to use 420 watt panels on these arrays because we're maximizing at the front end. To your point, we're maximizing what we're gonna get is output on the front end, but you pay more for those panels. So we have to track the supply chain.
Are you getting any from China?
No, no, the tariffs make the Chinese panels remarkably unappealing.
I have an ignorant question. How much money are we making off, is the town making off the landfill right now?
Nothing,
Oh, okay.
nothing.
I was just curious, because I don't know the history of the landfill, but if it's 30, you said it was, I don't know what the history, I probably should. You said it's 30 years old.
Yeah, I'd have to, I mean, I think that's
So-
around the timeframe it was.
It was capped, yeah, that's part of it.
So it's been capped for 30 years, so 30 years, we haven't been making
Right,
anything off of it.
Right.
Okay,
but we have,
And it's a lot older than 30 years.
okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's some ways going into it a lot
Oh, yeah.
longer than 30 years, but I think the closure of it was 30 years.
Okay.
30 years ago, the final cap was put on.
but we also have obligations to the DEC
Right,
to do quarterly testing, so we have to make sure that's,
Yeah, and that was in the lease that we can't go in there and we have to go in on a quarterly basis relative to doing the mandatory testing.
Yes,
In fact, he's got such good points and I'd almost like to delegate him to talk with you and work out a modification of the lease relative only to those particular points that are
Well,
concerned to us.
proposed, you know,
Proposed.
just for
'Cause
discussion.
we-
yeah,
See what the
I'd be
issues
happy
are.
to sit down with something, yeah.
And I would like, I'm not as adverse about the cash issue as they are, but if you're dealing with bonding companies, I'd like to know who the carrier is, and I'd like to at least get some verbiage from the particular bonds that have been issued, not necessarily numbers, but I'd like to see the type of verbiage so we can turn that over to council and have council review that. Okay?
The map, the map shows access to the site. I take it that's just going to stay there. I think that driveway that's up here in the north.
That's an easement, the easement that we're granting to the developer.
Does that belong to somebody else all the way to the road besides the town?
No, that's ours.
I think it's all
That's all ours.
town property.
It is, there is an easement on the, I don't have it in front of me. There is an easement that they're asking us to grant to them for access. In addition to the premises, and it's coming off of Bowman Road.
Yeah, it's up there.
So the lease parcel would be, basically, we're showing, we're proposing a fence, so the panels themselves will be fenced in separately from whatever fencing or gates are on the landfill property as a whole. So, you know, Abundant would have a gate at that fence, and then there'd be a gate out at the road at the current access point, and there would be an easement there. It would be a shared gate, is how these are typically set up, so that both the town and Abundant would have access to that gate. And, you know, for security of the arrays themselves, because we know that, you know, these closed landfills are a favorite place for someone to show up with their dirt bike or whatever, right? So we would have a fence around the array itself.
And I'm presuming you are aware of the people going there regularly, even though they're not supposed to, they cross the landfill regularly.
Yes,
So we kind of want to put an end to that.
right. So this would,
A lot of
Doesn't have that
snow- a lot of
benefit.
snowmobile. I live right there, so I,
We do hear that the deer can still get in for the 7-foot fence.
Okay,
Are there any other questions, I guess, on the application itself?
It's up to the board. No?
Thank you for your questions. There are any questions, the discussion.
If you could just make sure you get to council the
Yep.
letter about conflict of interest.
Yes.
Thank you.
And you're doing one now for Eldridge?
Yes. Yep. That's in construction. So, just, that's kind of our-
I got one right here in front of me, I can't find it.
Just looked at that, so.
If you're kind enough to accept that appointment as a delegate, then you could report back to the board as to when you come to terms on some of these issues.
He's gonna talk about this.
Or whether we have a proposal relative to
Yeah.
these
Do we
issues.
not, we don't have the lease.
We do.
We do.
We don't.
Where is it? 'Cause we don't.
Rich has it, we
Rich has
don't.
got it.
What the
But I
lease-
checked and you didn't send me one, so.
I did. I found it. The lease.
Yeah, I mean, it's not in our, The
No,
material
it's
we
not-
got?
It's not,
okay, I just want to make sure I didn't miss something, but
So we
are
could,
we supposed to, as the planning board, look at the lease, or is that a town board attorney?
the most important thing well, there's a lot of important things, but in my mind, the most important thing in the lease is what's called the demise premises. This might have a different term. I can't remember because there's different things that are in here, but it's the legal description of what they're renting. So if we don't know the legal description of what they're renting, how can we look at a site plan? And this is what's in the lease. The legal description will follow. So they do have,
That's in the packet.
in the packet, they do have a legal description, but it's not tied to this lease. So that's,
So I'm sorry, it will be, we didn't have.
I'm just saying, that's one of the things that you and I need to talk about to make sure that the legal description they have, so that we can look at the site plan and approve it, is part of this lease. And as of the lease signing, it was not.
Okay.
So we have no ability to approve a site plan on a property that we don't know what they're leasing.
Okay, may I explain that? Because there's logic to that. So we
Okay.
sign a lease so that we can have access to the property. And we can't apply for an interconnection agreement until we actually have that legal agreement.
Right.
So then we apply to the utility, and we originally applied for this one, a 5 megawatt array. The utility, and this happens more frequently than not, actually told us all we could build was 4.35. So we don't go out and do Alta surveys and then have to redo them for like another $15,000 until we have certainty from the utility. So we typically sign the leases saying that our intention, and we provide a site plan, our intention is this, but subject to what we get back from the utility, we may have to adjust. So in the intervening time, we've had to adjust. We adjusted that prior to submitting to the DEC for the wetland permit. But we do follow up after we have, the final building designs, et cetera, everything that's really is going to reflect what you are going to have on your site for 25 years. We update all those leases. So it's not that we are interested in you having that level of clarity and consistency and tightness. It's that it just doesn't tend to work on that.
I understand, completely understand. If somebody asked me if I would be willing to sign this lease without a legal description, I'd say no. You also have language in here that says we will grant easements in the future for connectivity. And there's no easement document in here. There's no, it's going to be a 5-foot, 10-foot, 15-foot wide easement somewhere in the future. So there's just, I am so upset about the way this document is put together that we need to come to some clarity on exactly where these easements going to be. We have an obligation, the town has an obligation to cut trees and make sure that none of the vegetation anywhere on our property outside of the lease premises is interfering with your solar array, and it's not blocking the sun getting to, so there's just a lot of things I'd like to talk about. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
So I don't know if that answers your
It
question.
doesn't, and I'm just kind of wondering where we go from here then, and like what we need to do for next steps and
I think-
where that puts
I
us.
think we need to have a conversation.
before we-
And we're not here to renegotiate the lease. The lease is the lease,
Mhm.
but there are certain terms of the
That we
lease that
need as
affect
this
what
way.
we do and how we do,
Mhm.
and those have to be addressed.
Yeah,
So the lease was signed.
Oh, yeah.
lease is signed, but when we do a site plan, if there's an easement, usually it's on the site plan.
Right.
Well, it's on, we don't know where it is yet. That's all.
Okay, I think we're all set for the time being. We're not going to give you a particular date at this point, but we're going to be looking to hear back from Rich as to,
Do you have some contact, do you have a card?
I gotta get it in the car.
Okay, okay.
and you're not going to Canada to renegotiate this.
No, no.
You're allowed to go.
You're allowed to go now.
Yeah.
Unless you're in Kingston or someplace nice, I'll go there.
Okay, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
I'll just leave a stack of my cards here so that you have a way to
Thank you.
contact through.
Are you out of the Syracuse
Oh, yeah,
office?
yeah, I'm right here. Sarah.
Okay,
So. Therefore, you need a contact.
so that's going to be left open. The next item on the agenda is an application by Capital Growth for a recommendation to the town board relative to a zone change. And due to a conflict of interest, I recuse myself on this, and I turn everything over to Fred to lead any discussions and
I
issues.
think, Chair, we're gonna move right here to this corner. I'm not gonna- Is there anyone here to represent?
John Mastinardi, can you guys all hear me?
I'm sorry, I didn't get your name.
Can everyone hear me?
No.
Turn up a little bit. Can you turn up? Can we turn up?
All right, I'm just trying to troubleshoot some stuff here on my end. Is it getting any better?
Yeah, it's a little better.
Okay, I'll just try to talk a little louder. So good evening, everyone. My name is John Mastinardi. I'm with Griffiths Engineering, here to represent the proposed Dollar General at 6589 Manoa Bridgeport Road. Just to give you a little background on the project, the owner is proposing to build a 10,640 square foot Dollar General store. The proposed lot size is approximately 1.97 acres, which is subdivided from a larger 2.819 acre lot. The site access will be from the Manoa Bridgeport Road. And the parking, proposed parking spaces is 35, but the zoning requires 81. So if this project was to move forward, we would also need a zoning variance for the required parking spaces. So that's the proposed project. Any questions?
Is,
Thank you.
What did you say about parking?
Yeah.
I'm having a little bit of difficulty here.
Yeah, so the proposed project is proposing 35 parking spaces. Zoning requires 81 parking spaces. So if the project was to move forward, we would have to go before zoning board for a variance for the reduction.
is the entire parcel in the AE flood zone?
Not the entire parcel, but probably 50% of it.
Has the exact wetland boundary been determined and flagged and surveyed? I assume there's a wetland back in those woods.
Pardon me?
Is there wetlands on the project site?
There was none identified on the parcel.
Just out of curiosity, this has nothing to do with what we're talking about, but it's a 1.97 acre parcel, of which probably, I'm guessing, half an acre, if not a little bit more, is not being used at all. Why is that even part of this?
I'm not sure. Are you referring to the 0.5 acres located to the southwest corner of the
yeah.
map?
Yes, it's the property line. It says 288 feet, I think it's 288 approximately, which is, I don't know, probably 30, 40 feet off of the parking area. Just curious why that's part of the parcel.
That may be used for stormwater control if we find that there isn't good infiltration area elsewhere on the parcel.
Rich, can you?
John, what is the dashed yellow
Can you point to
line
where you're talking about?
on this,
Oh, I thought that was north.
on the map?
Let me share my screen here for a second.
So,
This dashed line is bracketed. There's actually two
yellow.
of them.
Okay, so can everybody see that clearly?
Yeah,
Mhm.
yep.
Okay, so could you repeat the question, please?
Oh, is that just an elevation? That's just a topo line, right?
The yellow is a topo, yes, the yellow dash line is
I got you. I can
the
see that.
contour.
Okay, board, do you have any other questions at the moment?
And the
this is
green line,
the recommendation for a zone change.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Before, this is a zone change that's going to kind of crowd the resident, some people that have their homes there. And somebody needs to probably, we need to probably have the benefit of some response from the public before we make a decision. If we're not, the town board definitely needs to have it before they make a decision.
Yeah, I drove over there today and the brown roof house here,
This one here.
there was a man sitting outside, so I got out and talked to him.
Good.
And the thing is, these two houses, like when I don't know if anyone else driven over there, like when you drive by there, they even seem closer to the road than they are in the picture.
Yeah.
So they would be super close to the site. And so he just happened to comment that, he's lived there for 37 years in that brown roof house. And when he lived, initially, there wasn't even the commercial structures on the front side of Kirkville Road there. So, I don't know, that's why I just talked to him
What's
briefly, but
that?
that's a gas station and pizza place.
On the corner.
And then there's like I don't even know if it's open for business, but it's like a hair barber
It's a
shop.
barber
or
shop.
something. Yeah.
Is there a reason why you requested CA and not CB?
I'm not sure why that request was made, actually, sorry. I just thought that this commercial, I think the applicant was thinking that this commercial proposed commercial building would fit better under the CA by use.
Also, if you look at the zoning map, I looked at that too, and it's like, there's a, just for zoning purposes, there's the commercial, the little bits here, and then the funeral home down below, and then there's no other commercial
Nothing, no.
anywhere near there. And then, I mean, there is in Village of Manoa, but that's a village. And just in case anybody wants to look at my phone, I also looked because I was just curious that this particular location, there's a Dollar General within 3 miles, and there's a lot of Dollar Generals. I don't know if it's actually would end up being a Dollar General, but
Well, that's precisely why I asked the question earlier.
yeah,
Why this is such a big site and you're not using the whole thing. Because once the zone is changed, it could be
anything,
anything
yeah.
within the zoning district that we,
Well, that's why I look at the CB, because retail sales, including grocery stores, department stores, et cetera, are allowed in the CB. So, and remember, CA is our most,
wide open.
wide open, like anything could go there. So why are we really even talking about CA?
Yeah,
Was the corner gas station there CA? Is it zone CA now?
It's gotta be, if it's a gas
It's
station.
gas.
Well, it might be a non-conforming,
I see the picture.
it's CA.
With the houses that are located close by,
Yeah, see it.
on the same street, across the street, I don't like the zone change, but that's just me.
Yeah,
another
everything
thing.
north of it is not. I guess it would determine, like, if we would want to increase that zone change past the road front.
Oh, yeah.
There are so many other
Whispering at
places
you.
you can put a Dollar General in the town of Manlius. I'm opposed to this.
I mean, unless we heard from the neighbors that they need more places to shop.
Well, the town board will hear.
Well, we certainly, I mean, remember, this board, this specifically is referred to the planning board for a reason.
Mhm.
And I know that the last few times, couple times, I think that we had recommendations on zone changes. We were very particular, and this board was very much listened to. And we had a very robust presentation, and I believe the public was involved. And I would recommend that we have basically an informational public hearing and see if any of these neighbors come in and give us some input. And then, of course, we need to look at, I mean, unfortunately, we don't have a comprehensive plan yet, but we did recently redo all of these commercial districts. So I think that's tells you kind of some idea of what the town board is thinking. And the experience of and decisions that have been made relative to other CA and CB districts is informative. Everything that's happened in this corridor, this board has acted on is all informative. So when we get to that point, to make the recommendation, we need to take all those things into account.
I am not opposed to having a public hearing to listen, but this property in that location, to me, no matter what the public says, I would make a recommendation not to change the zoning. But that's just based on me looking at it, driving up there and looking around at what's around it.
Well, one other question I had in, like, where it says FEMA flood map boundary, like, all around it. And again, I don't know if anyone drove by, happens to be driving by there, or, when we had all that water recently, because it was pretty wet and muddy
Yeah, I wasn't up there then.
when I just was there today. So, I mean, I don't know if that's the other thing, like, do we want to introduce commercial development of any kind in that kind of wet area and affect the
That isn't
residences
even,
around
that
it?
isn't, that's not, that's a concern, but my bigger concern is we have residences so close to that property.
They are, they're better, yeah.
They can
That,
put anything there too.
pardon,
They can put anything there.
once we do a CA.
Well, CA.
Yeah, and
I
that's,
wouldn't give them that.
no, that's,
RA.
There's kind of two issues then. It's whether or not we want to change the zoning at all. And if we do, we probably already have made up our mind, we don't want it to be CA. We want it to be.
I'm gonna make a motion that we recommend to the town board, do not change the zoning to CA. That's what they've asked us for. That would be my
And
recommendation.
just let, and we just,
And if they want to change the CB somewhere down the road or whatever, fine.
I would
But-
second the motion.
Can,
would you also add to that, that they may want to hear from the public, from the people who live in.
Well, they definitely have to.
Yeah.
Prior to a zone change.
Yeah. Okay,
I'm just saying that it doesn't make sense for me to make a recommendation.
okay, the motion's on the floor, that we
Well,
recommend to the town board.
so if we do make that motion, are we going to just, I think we need to put some reasons that we're not recommending to CA, and are we recommending to the board that if there is a different zone they wish to change it to, that it come back to us?
Yes.
For further recommendation?
I guess that's always the condition.
Well, I'm not sure, because there might be other discussion. And I want to make sure that that's the intent.
Mhm.
Yeah,
I would say so.
I would agree with that, and I'll amend my motion to say we should recommend not to do a CA. However, if something comes back to us at a later date, we'll review it and give them an evaluation back.
So-
Second.
I'll second that.
All right, and can we say, I think we should tell the board why?
Pardon?
Why? You're the planning board, say why.
Why?
Because I think that would be
Why we're
spot
not
zoning. There's RA all around it.
Okay, not that it's spot zoning, but that it's not compatible.
I don't think
It's
there
not
should be a
compatible with the-
continuation of the
We should already
CA past the, where it is on
I'll
that
take
road
it.
front.
Okay, so
I don't know.
it's not compatible with the RA zoning
That surrounds it.
surrounding it.
And
What else?
Yeah, I've got something else. And the yet to be determined master plan for the town. It would be
Mhm.
helpful if we had the input from the town board.
Mhm. Valerie, you said something else.
I was saying that I don't think we should continue this existing CA past the front, the road frontage of Kirkville Road. I'm saying Kirkville Road because that's what it is on here, but
Extended past Kirkville Road.
past the road, Kirkville Road frontage.
Mhm.
Mike raised a good,
But by granting CA, I mean, what we're essentially saying is this is wide open,
Yeah,
Mhm.
and is that something we really want? I think that needs to be part of this.
No,
too.
we don't.
yeah, that would be.
Exactly.
that's
This, well, the
right. Did I
CA is,
say that?
the CA is the least restrictive,
Well,
and that's not appropriate, right?
mm-mm.
Right.
The other reason why, and this may not go in the notes or may not go in the notes, but the other reason why I feel is, again, like coming off of Kirkville Road, after those two corners, you're just going up to residences, then eventually crossing the thruway and then probably out of the town. But I don't feel like there needs to be
Well, eventually
that extra
goes-
trap, just turning off of there, like that, to me, right now, it's a little more private. Maybe not, but because you're not coming off of there to go for a commercial reason, you're going for residential reasons.
Yeah, I just, that can be anything. Right now, we're talking about Dollar General. If they grant it a zone change, it can be anything. The deal with Dollar General may fall apart and they gotta find somebody else.
We're a second to the motion.
Valerie
Valerie
said,
second.
Valerie, you said? Okay, good. Now, I guess we've discussed it. Anybody got anything else that they want to say? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Right.
I,
Motion carried. Opposed? Was there any opposed? Yeah.
Except for me. I recuse.
Yeah, I'm looking at you. because-
We're not opposed.
To see if you did a good
Yes.
job.
Okay, back to you, Joe.
Well, Fred, I think,
I second Fred's motion.
Do we have to
No.
say goodbye to them?
Oh, we are there, aren't we?
Yeah.
No, I move we adjourn.
Oh, one other thing, before we close, we're gonna move, I would entertain a motion to move to executive session.
So moved.
Four.
So moved by Mike,
Four.
Pending litigation.
We always have to state what we want to do.
okay,
But
second
wait,
by
do we-
Ann.
Do we need to dismiss him officially?
We ought
Yes.
to tell
Yeah,
you.
everybody needs to go off.
We decided that we were going to recommend John be there.
Unless he left. Okay.
He got tired of us.
Okay.
Are we off the air?
One second.